Welcome back, everyone. Here I have a PS4 HDMI repair, and I am fixing another attempt that someone has done on this board. The HDMI port is not aligned, and it's not quite soldered on correctly, so I will be having a look and repairing this PS4 board. So the first thing that I noticed was that the pins were not aligned, and also there are a couple components on this board that have broken and fallen off due to the other attempt as well. So there is a diode here that is broken in half, and then there's this resistor, and then there's a couple other missing parts. So hopefully I'll be able to get this board up and running again. We'll see what we can do with this with this repair here. The first thing that I'm going to be doing is I'm going to be removing the old HDMI port and putting on a new one, and then I will be replacing these different resistors, and there's also some diodes on the board, and then it should be good to go. So it's really good to have a scope when doing these kind of repairs, because as you can see, the components are very small. They're probably about a quarter the size of a piece of rice, so you can't really test them too easily. Now I did measure some of the resistor values. So this resistor here was 2 kilo ohms, and there's the one down here was 36 kilo ohms. So I found one of the best ways to remove the old HDMI port is I put low melt solder on the pins, and that just makes it so when you heat up the back side of the board that the traces don't come off with the HDMI port. So with that low melt solder on, I'm applying about 400 degrees Celsius using my heat gun onto the legs, and then I'm just pushing gently down on the port. Don't force anything, and it should just drop right down off of the board just like that. With the board, the HDMI port removed, I can apply the new one, and there's a couple of ways that you can do that, but the key is to use flux, and otherwise the solder will stick to each other and you can have a short. So apply lots of flux to all the pins, and I'm just going through each pin individually, and then I'm just soldering it on with my soldering iron. If you have a flathead solder tip, solder iron tip, you can also do it faster by just dragging the solder along, but I found that often creates bridges, and I found that just using this one pin at a time, I was able to verify that it was a good connection right away, so it takes less time to test, because I don't want to put the board, I don't have the original PS4 console to put it back to test it, so I want to make sure that each connection is good. If there is a bridge, just apply a lot more flux on that area, and then increase the temperature of your soldering iron a little bit more, and then just pull it down, and that should remove the bridge from the two pins, or however many pins that are soldered together. So if it still doesn't work, just keep on applying more flux, and then you may want to increase the temperature a little bit more, but just pulling down, and then the bridges between the pins should come away there. So you can see right there we got the bridge away, and then just solder up each of those other pins. The leftmost pin, I believe, is the HDMI port detect. So if you're missing one of the pins, some pins I believe are not connected. There's a lot of ground pins, and you can look online about for each individual one. Later on in this video, I also show pin out for each of the pins and where they're going to the individual components and what traces are going where, because sometimes the traces do break, and if that ever happens, you would have to repair the trace lines, but this board seems to be fine for that. I'm just using my tweezers just to push the pins to verify that they have a good solder connection. So if they don't move, that means that they are good. And I was doing a pin by pin soldering, so all the pins are looking good already, so that's good. You want to make sure that there's lots of solder, because if there is not a good connection, obviously it will not work there. So I tested it all out, they seem to be fine. So the other thing is, after you're done the soldering job, I'm just using a toothpick. It's kind of like a tooth brush, and using isopropyl alcohol, I can remove all the old flux just to clean up the board, and then we can also have a double check that we can see everything in there, so it's looking good. So I'm going to be putting this one on. This one right here is 2K. I got one that's really close from a laptop that I'll use to replace there. And then we'll get the other side. So I put this as 1.2K. .6. I'm going to be soldering. This is a diode, this is a capacitor, this is the negative of the diode right here. Let's tack it on there. Pinouts from the HDMI connector. You can see the traces here. Now we have some diodes here. We have 1, 2, 3 diodes, smaller diodes, and the negative is right here, and there's 0.6 forward voltage. So in my case, I was on this board I was missing this resistor. This resistor here is 2K, so I presume this is a 2K. I've replaced that. We have 2 diodes. This diode was missing. I replaced that as well. And over here, these diodes, I presume, are the same. 0.6 forward voltage in the negatives on this side, and then we have a capacitor here as well. So that's it for this HDMI port, I had to replace the diodes, caps, I had a resistor diode, got all these legs all on nice, and took off the old HDMI port. So that's it. Took quite a bit of work.